going to go quite dark down here though. Now, selecting the interactive gradient, if you think about the page split into thirds, horizontal lines, I'll go in the middle and then drag it down, and we've got something to work with. So we have something that kind of looks like the sky, something that kind of represents some sort of landscape. Across here, it becomes a little bit lighter. We can think about that as a horizon line. So if I've got this this wet brush that I tend to use. It's really good for blending. I'll just quickly show you how this reacts. So if I color pick down here and push up, it blends really nicely across the value range. I'm getting all sorts of different colors and values because of the pressure sensitivity that I've got. If I drag this down into the darker colors, we're starting to create a shape. So across this middle part towards where this lighter line is, we now have a range of colors excuse me, that we can color pick and use to create different parts of the landscape. So if I go around here somewhere, color pick there, push that color up, it's starting to appear from this section, and then you get the contrast as you go up. If I go down again and then push it up, we've then got another layer that's starting to overlap. So we've now created a foreground, a midground, and a background. This is all from color picking the existing values that already exist from the interactive gradient. So you don't have to think about coming over here and selecting, is this going to be light enough? Is it going to be dark enough? It kind of predetermines where your values should be. And the contrast between these two will help to dictate and explain the distance between these two objects. The objects in the distance will obviously have this kind of light value. The horizon line is usually the lightest point of an environment. So the landscape, in theory, is the lightest point. Sorry, the landscape in the distance by the horizon line is usually the lightest point that you'll see. Now this is already kind of looking like a landscape. and we haven't really done that much with it yet. This is literally just picking different values, dragging them around. To create the effect of a focal point or perspective, we should probably think about drawing the eye to a certain point. So we could do that with the use of light or a river or something like that. Once you kind of have something that's beginning to look like something that you want to use, we can then go in with another layer. I'm now going to change this one to shadow map. Now this reacts to color, so it's not just going to be a grayscale shadow. So you need to think about what color you're going to select. It should probably be quite light as well. As you introduce it, you can start to pick out shadows in areas in the foreground. This will give you another range to your value. Again, I'm trying to think about drawing your eye to a certain point, so we're looking over here maybe. If that's not quite dark enough, we can just go over it again. This, of course, is on its own separate layer, so if you did want to get rid of any of these brush strokes that you're not particularly happy with, we can chop some of these out. Turning them into individual rocks and giving more texture to your environment. Okay, it's still looking pretty light, so I mean you can always do little tricks like this. You can duplicate the layer, instantly makes it darker. You can then erase parts of the top layer, and this is giving you a value range as well, because you now have two parts to the shadow map. But at this stage, we're just looking for interesting interesting shapes to work with. Probably go in and separate these two areas a little bit. Think about some of the surfaces that have light hitting them. Still just thinking about an interesting concept at the moment. Nothing is set in stone. We can pretty much change whatever we want. So we've kind of got these bigger rocks on the side, some of these smaller ones down here. I could probably go and add some highlights. So I'll just take that up into about the middle. Okay, this is starting to get a little bit lost now with quite a lot of information all in the same place. So I'm going to collapse a few of these layers. And I'm going to add another shadow map. Let's just see how dark this is. Okay. And what I'm doing here is trying to give a bit more separation from the foreground to the midground to the background. Okay, I'll collapse that layer as well. You can go in at this point and start picking out some of the details that have kind of appeared. Start turning them into edges. Probably best not to start noodling too much at this point. we're still trying to create form and understand what's actually going on here. Now I'm just colour picking, going through some of these existing lines. I can change them, cutting through them, leaving the contrasting edge. Still thinking about where drawing our eye to this area in the middle. You can also use the area behind an object to cut away pieces. Trying to establish the edges of this rock using the one behind it. And then I can do that again using this one. And you can pretty much just work around trying to separate all these edges by introducing this kind of contrast. So this is a lighter edge against this dark edge here. Just adding a bit of shadow behind these two edges there. This now looks like this particular part here is behind this part. Should probably work on the other side a little bit. So same thing again. Pick the middle layer to work the edge on the foreground. anywhere where you can see a really bright edge, you can put a darker edge against it and it will create form. So now we've got this kind of lip that's been created. Probably looking like a big mess at the moment, but I promise you it does start to appear after a while if you keep using this separation technique, using the light against the dark edges.
I would never say that this looks like a mess, Davey.
It's I don't know whether it's quite going the way I thought, but
It
sometimes
looks great, and if you could see the comments and the questions window, everybody's pretty impressed.
okay.
And a lot of people have the same questions. So just
Okay.
let me know when you're ready, and I'll throw them out.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I'll probably just need to work over this using that same technique. So if you want to throw some out now, I'm happy.
Yeah. So the main questions are, as usual, revolving around this brush you're using. So people are wondering what brush category or variant did you start with to create this variation?
Right. Okay. Yeah, that's something I get asked quite a lot because I tend to use this brush for almost everything. It's I've had it for quite a long time. I always export it and then import it into the latest version of Painter. It hasn't actually been in the last 3 versions, but if you want to find it, you can go into the brush library, and I think the last version it was in was 2015. So if we go in there, it's in acrylic, and then it's this wet brush here. It's basically it's got a custom dab, so it's a custom brush. It's the original's quite square, and yeah, I just created this custom dab and messed around with some of the settings, and yeah, I use it all the time. It's a really versatile brush. It blends really nicely. I mean, it kind of behaves like you think wet acrylic would. So yeah, it's been fine tuned over the past few years, and I just keep tweaking it just a little bit here and there, but it tends to work well on most paintings. I could probably just show you I'll show you the dab if I just move that what. It doesn't seem to want to get on there. Oh, sorry, I'm not even on it, that's why. I seem to be on that one, so so that's the dab pretty much. It's got quite a rough edge. There are light and dark parts to it, which gives it a bit of texture. But yeah, generally it's a pretty good brush for blending and getting a bit of texture here and there when you need it.
Fantastic. Thank you for answering that.
Does that make sense?
Everybody else is wondering, do you ever sell your brushes?
No. If you want to know how to make that one, or even get it into your version of Painter, I did do a tutorial on it, so
Okay.
I posted that quite recently. So yeah, it's out there for free if anybody wants to.
That's Davey Baker Art on YouTube.
Yeah. There's like a 3-minute tutorial how to create custom wet brush. It's
Perfect.
something like that. Yeah, I seem to get quite a few people asking me about it, so I emailed it over to a few people, and then I decided I'll make a tutorial so people can make their own. They can customize it however they want it.
Okay, so I'll just include your YouTube channel link again with the follow-up email that will go out tomorrow with the link to this recording.
Sure. But yeah, that's I think that's one of the only brushes that I've done a video for. I don't really use that many custom brushes. I've got a couple of textures that I use, but this is mainly the only custom brush that I do use. Most of the other ones are straight out the box, just with a bit of tweaking. So, okay, this is sort of starting to look like something at the moment.
Why do you use the shadow map composite method?
It just gives me control over whether I want to keep it or remove it. If I'm just painting on one layer, then I'm kind of stuck with it. It's kind of just quicker to use it. It's something that I've only just started to use actually, but I find it quite useful. So I can kind of throw it in there, and then you can like chop bits out of it.
All right. Okay.
And you've still got the underlying colours in there. And then if it's too strong as well, you can turn it down, and you've got a bit of texture left. So yeah, you've got more control over it, I'd say. That's my my use for it.
Yeah. And
But,
what size canvas are you using, or do you typically use for your landscapes?
Recently, I've been using 1920 by 1080. That's just the kind of standard TV screen size. I think I've been doing that because of the tutorials.
What kind of DPI are you doing? 300 or less than that?
Yeah, about 350s, probably enough. That's kind of printable size if you ever did want to print any of these off. About 350 is a pretty good size to work to.
And I forgot to ask you what tablet you're using.
Oh, right, okay. I've got the 24-inch Cintiq. It's about 5 years old now. I kind of went all out when I decided to get into digital art. But yeah, it's still going strong at the moment. The screen resolution's probably not as good as some of the new versions of the Cintiq, but I have got a separate monitor, which I have my navigator on there, so I'll just drag that over. I have this on a separate monitor, so I get a good balance between the two screens on color and resolution. So that's kind of useful. But yeah, it's the Wacom 24-inch Cintiq.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I should probably look at introducing some of the clouds. There's a technique that I've just started to use for clouds, which is quite useful. Okay, I'll add another layer up here. I'm still going to use the same brush. I'm just going to check this pick up underlying color. The reason why I'm doing that is because the custom brush creates what we call ghosting sometimes. The edge is transparent, so it sometimes fills in with white. If you've got a brush that does that, you can check this little, it's like a color picker, and that basically stops that from happening. So it will pick up this blue instead of having a kind of a white edge around it. Probably duplicate this layer actually, and then drag this one down a touch. Because we kind of want more sky just to help demonstrate this particular technique. So which one of that one? Okay. Just get rid of some of that. Okay, so I'm on a separate layer here. We've got a bit more room to demonstrate this. On the main color, I'm going to go up here somewhere, and we're going to paint in some clouds. So this is the same wet brush. It's got the pressure sensitivity on it, so it can be quite small or you can go bigger. It's still kind of blending a little bit with the blue underneath. I want to try and have these clouds bigger at the top here, because these will be the closest, but then draw your eye to this point down here somewhere. This is obviously pretty quick. You could tidy these up a little bit, put some edges on them, a bit more detail. Okay, something like that. Now, I'm going to use the, what is that? I basically want to use the free transform for this next bit. Now we've got a box around our cloud area to create a bit more perspective. We can grab the perspective distortion and we can drag this in a little bit. So by pulling that in and then pulling this bit out, we've got the perspective distortion. We've given it a bit more distance. It's all kind of ended up around here somewhere. And yeah, this was something I started to do quite recently. It tends to work pretty well if you just spend a little bit more time on it. This, of course, is on its own layer, so you can duplicate this if it's not quite light enough. By doing that, you can then work into the top layer with the eraser, and you can actually end up with controlling the value a little bit. It's probably not quite as bright as I'd hoped, so it's quite difficult to see. But yeah, there's a few different things that you can do with it, just because it is on its own layer. You can move it around, change the direction of it if you wanted to with the perspective tool. But yeah, that's something that's quite useful. I've started to do recently.
That is a great tip.
Yeah, it's very simple, but can be quite effective.
Are you now painting entirely in digital, or do you still do some traditional?
Pretty much just in digital. I do small thumbnails in sketchbooks, occasionally with markers and pencils, but I don't really paint with paint anymore. it's something I don't think I've given it up, but it's just so much easier to turn your computer on and away you go, rather than setting up all the paints, trying to mix the right colours that you need, and the mess sometimes.
Yeah.
It's something you do kind of forget about if you're not doing it all the time. When you come back to it, it's like, yeah, it's just easier to paint in digital for me personally now. Okay, so I don't know how high I want that to go. I think I'll probably take it way back up. I might just squeeze this. This again is something you can't do with traditional. Change the perspective of something that you've already painted. You pretty much have to do the whole thing over again. So yeah, it's good to take advantage of these things. Okay. Now I'd probably go to the glow brush. This is something I use a lot. I probably use it too much, actually. I mean, you can use it for creating. Where I could put like a sun in here with it or something like that. It's looking a bit sort of foggy because I've done it so big. But yeah, I tend to use it quite a lot on edges as well. So I'm looking to put a little bit of highlight on some of these brighter edges. You don't want to go too bright with this though, because it is really powerful. If I just go in, I'll tend to just put little tiny bits here and there. Not too much really, but just separate some of these edges. We're thinking about the sun coming from there, so you can introduce a few highlights here and there. So don't go too crazy with it, because if you press too hard, it starts to look like this, which it can look okay sometimes, but you probably want to build up to that rather than the first time you use it, just go in and start adding these luminous highlights.
Did you customize the glow brush at all?
No, I haven't. It's whatever I've got it set on here, down here. It's strength 43%. It's got the pressure sensitivity on it, so I'm kind of dragging it around on the screen, and every now and then I'll just push on it, and it will just give me like a little dot. But no, it's not a custom dab or anything. It's pretty much as it came.
Okay, great. And it's in the FX category for anybody that doesn't know where that is, just in the standard application.
Yeah, yeah, it's always been there as far as I know as well. It's a pretty useful tool. I mean, it's great for lights and stuff like that. If you're drawing vehicles, you can get this kind of haze around the edge if you use it really big. It'll, give you this kind of crazy light effect. But yeah, I usually add a little bit of that, and then I can go back in with the wet brush again if it's starting to look a bit kind of fluffy. So now I've actually got a new value from the glow brush, and I'm going to use the wet brush to go around all these edges again. And yeah, it's kind of repeating the same process. You're just trying to separate all of these different parts of the environment so they kind of make sense.
Do you have any advice? I'm not sure how you learned Painter, if you just dove in and experimented on your own, or if there were any particular YouTube channels, books, forums, that kind of thing you could recommend.
I'd probably suggest just jumping in, having a go, and then when you get stuck, then search for some tutorials on that particular aspect. I mean, there's no harm in just going in, having fun with it, rather than trying to copy what people are telling you to do straight away. I think you should probably just go in there, just find some brushes that you like, create some fun stuff, and then see how you get on. If you're trying to create something in particular and you obviously are having problems getting the result that you want, then yeah, jump in and look for some tutorials. There's plenty online as far as I can see. So there's usually an answer out there for whatever you're looking for.
And you can always hop on our social media channels if you're looking for something you can't find and ask us for some help.
True, yeah. There's all that side of it as well. There's whole communities of people that basically, if you ask people, you don't have to even be on forums. You could be on Instagram or Deviant. You see somebody using the software and they're using it in a way that you like, you can approach them, and usually people are pretty helpful, and they'll be able to point you in the right direction.
For a true beginner, let's say you really don't have traditional painting experience like you did, would you suggest that they maybe take a traditional class first?
If you're really struggling with it, maybe. I can't really remember a time when I wasn't drawing, if you like. I always seem to do it as a child. I was just constantly drawing. So I think when you've thought about it for that long, you almost naturally take it for granted that you think in that particular way. But not everybody does. So yeah, it probably is worth taking lessons of some kind if you literally have never tried drawing before. So there's a lot of traditional techniques that apply to digital as well. All the aspects of light and shadow, like things like reflective light. I haven't really done that much on this, but there's there's a lot of things that apply to both. So you could take traditional classes and it would improve your digital artwork as well. I don't see why not.
I'm going to ask you one more question because we're already at the top of the hour here.
Okay.
I'm wondering, do you ever print your paintings, and do you have a recommendation for what kind of paper or canvas or a particular service to do that?
I don't actually. It's something I'm thinking about doing, but no, I haven't actually got to the point where I've approached the company to start printing. But as I said earlier, I think about 300 DPI is a good size to work in if you're thinking about printing.
Right.
But yeah, I couldn't really advise anyone on the paper.
Well, we could probably make some recommendations. I know this topic has come up in other webinars, and every artist has, depending upon where they live, a certain service that they use. But
Sure.
I'll see if I can come up with a recommendation for that.
Cool. Okay.
This looks amazing.
Yeah, it's well, it's still not quite there, but
Well,
that's kind of how I go about it.
for being able to paint and talk at the same time in an hour, I think it's pretty darn impressive.
Yeah, I normally just sit in silence while listening to music, but I don't normally talk at the same time. So yeah, it's.
Well, and it is. I mean, if you haven't done it before, it is quite distracting. It can completely throw the whole painting rhythm off. So I think you did a fantastic job, and everybody is just saying thank you so much. They learned things they didn't know within the first 10 minutes. So
Cool. Okay, that's
super valuable for everybody. And for anybody that has Thanksgiving tomorrow, I just want to say have a happy Thanksgiving. For everybody else, if you're going back to work, I'm sorry. Or maybe you're happy about that. It's probably a good thing. But I'm so thankful that you could join us and share all of your knowledge with us today, Davey. It's really great.
Sure, that's no problem at all. Thanks for inviting me to hold one of these. It's been fun.
All right, guys. Well, we're going to go ahead and close down the webinar now, and we've recorded the whole thing, so I'll send you the link tomorrow morning. Otherwise, you can just go up to YouTube/Painter Tutorials later today if you can't wait. and I will have it posted there under the webinar section of Painter 2018. So with that, I will wish you a happy day, and thanks again, Davey.
Okay, that's great. Thanks.
All right. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.